We have learned how to solve a linear equation. Now we're going to see how to set up a linear equation to solve a word problem. Let's look at this example. Find three consecutive integers whose sum is negative 81. Must set up equation to solve. And I know some of the students might be able to just pick some integers and try to add them up and to see if you can get a negative 81. Pick three consecutive integers. But we don't want you to do that way just by trial and error. We want you to learn to use algebra to solve this question. And especially the reason is, for this example, it might be easy to just guess what these three integers are. But for complicated problems, especially if the answers are not integers, they could be fractions or even square root of 2, something like that. You will never be able to guess what that is. And so it's going to be very difficult to guess what and if the answer is a fraction or radical numbers, like square root of 2. So we need to learn different ways to solve problems, especially using algebra is very useful when we solve difficult problems in high-level, either like engineering courses. Okay, so let's see how we set up equation first. And we've seen what an equation looks like. And first of all, it has a variable in there. And secondly, so we have two sides. We have left-hand side and right-hand side. So this is our goal. We need to have an equation that looks like this. Now, usually the sentence will give you a equality, something equals something. So you need to find a relation that two things that are equal. So here, what we see there is, in this question, the sum is negative 81. So if we use a symbol for that, that's an equal sign. So that gives us an equation. So pretty much you can just translate every single word into mathematical symbol. So is equal sign, negative 81, negative 81. So previously we learned how to translate English words or phrases or sentences to mathematical symbols. So far I got these last two words. Is equal sign, negative 81 is already mathematical symbol. But next part is the sum. Sum means addition. So we're adding. How do we get the sum? We got to describe this mathematically using symbols. So we know it's addition, but what plus what? In this case, it tells us whose sum, which means these three integers sum. That means we got to add three integers. Okay, so let's put, I'm going to leave 1, 2, 3 blank space here for these three integers. Again, we are supposed to use variables to describe these three integers. So how do we describe three integers using variables or English letters? The last bonus problem we did, we have something, a similar question. So next we're going to try to figure out what letter should we use. And in this case, we got three unknowns. So there are actually three different ways. You can say, let's make the smallest. By the way, consecutive integer means these three integers are one after another. For example, 1, 2, 3. These are three consecutive integers. Or 7, 8, 9. So there are three consecutive integers. Or they could be negative numbers. For example, negative 3 and negative 2, negative 1. There are three consecutive integers. All right, here we're going to put, let's just say maybe the first one is the smallest. Okay, so out of all of these three consecutive integers, the first one is the smallest. And if I make the first one x, and the next integer, which is always one bigger, as you can see, so you can add 1 to the smallest, to get the second, even for the negatives. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. So to describe the second, the next integer, you're going to take the first, smallest, add 1 to it. And the first one, we don't know, since we don't know what it is, we use variable x. So we're just going to add 1 to x. So that gives us the second. Let me put parentheses for that. It's not really needed, but to make it clear, you can see the x is the first, the x plus 1 is the second. And the third, the last one, which is the largest. The largest integer can also be obtained by adding another 1 to the previous one. So for example, I can add 1 to 8 to get 9. I can add 1 to 3 to get to 2 to get 3. So I'm going to add another 1 to x plus 1. And that gives us, so the second number is x plus 1. I need to add another 1 to that. That gives me x plus 1 plus 1. You can go ahead and combine them to get x plus 2. So that gives us 3. The description, algebraic expressions for these 3 integers. So now we got our equation. The sum of 1, 2, 3 consecutive integers is negative 81. So that's the English sentence, but mathematical symbols will be this equation here. So now we're going to solve this linear equation and get the answer for x. When we solve a linear equation, our goal is to get x by itself. So first we notice that in this expression we have 3 x's, x, 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 that we can combine. So we want to get x by itself. Now to combine them, we got 3, we get 3x, and this 1 and 2 can be combined to get a 3. So this is like simplifying an algebraic expression, combining like terms. Letters can be combined, and the variables, numbers can also be combined. On the right-hand side, it stays the same. Now we want to, since we already have variable term, that's the variable term, a single variable term on the left, we're going to move the constant term, the number, to the other side. You can either subtract 3 from both sides, or if you remember the rule, when you move something to the other side, change the plus to the minus or the minus to the plus. And now we have 3x on the left, and negative 81 minus 3 is negative 84. So it's like adding two negative numbers. And now we get rid of 3 because it's multiplication between 3 and x. We divide both sides by 3. And 3 divided by 3 gives us 1. And 1x is the same as x, equals negative 28. And remember, the question is asking for 3 numbers, and x is only the first one. So the 3 consecutive integers will be, let me use a different color for that. The first one will be negative 28. The second one, we add 1 to it, so that would be negative 27. And when we add another one, that gives us a negative 26. So the answers are negative 28, negative 27, and negative 26. The standard way, we have standard steps to solve a word problem. When I started doing this, what I just did was I started with this equal sign here. But usually we look for the unknowns. What are we solving for? So for example, find 3 consecutive integers. That's what we're solving for. So the first step, usually we declare the variables, which means the unknowns. So in this case, the unknowns, these are our unknowns. 3, we're solving for 3 integers, 3 consecutive integers. And so you want to describe them in terms of variables. So what I did is to make the first x, the next will be x plus 1, the next will be x plus 2. there are different ways you can do. For example, if you make the one in the middle, the second number as x, the previous one, the one right before it should be x minus 1, and the one after it will be x plus 1. And that will also work. So you can also use these three numbers, expressions, instead of these. Or you can even make the last one your x. Then the previous one will be x minus 1, and the one before it will be x minus 2, so whichever one you like. So probably most of us will start with make the first one, the smallest x, and adding one, instead of make the largest x and subtracting 1, because usually addition is easier. Okay, now let's look at after you declare the variables, you have all the unknowns with the algebraic expression expressing them. Now you can set up equation. So that's when you have to look for an equal relation somewhere to help you set up an equation. So when you set up equation, you will translate the words to sentences. Words to symbols. So whenever you see like a is or equals, that will give you the equal sign in the equation. After you set up equation, of course, you will solve the equation. So in general, we have these 3 steps. So first, start with the unknown, express them in terms of variables. Secondly, set up equation, and then finally solve the equation.